18 Summers Tribe. We're here today with Joey Odom. Welcome, Joey.
It's so good to see you, Jim and Jamie. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Joey, you have brought what Jim and I would consider something pretty profound to the world, and it is something that helps put our devices in a box, literally. So tell us a little bit about how you arrived at diving deeper into the relationships that we have with our phones.
Mm.
And yeah, I just would love if you shared that story about your son.
Yes, absolutely. My son Harrison, who is, and when you talk about 18 summers, right now we are in 16 right now. Tomorrow, literally tomorrow, Harrison turns 16 years old. So we got a
Oh,
big epic movie. I'm showing him. We every year we watch a movie for his birthday. So tonight is Saving Private Ryan, going
oh,
into his 16th birthday. Good Memorial Day week movie as we're recording here. So when Harrison was 5, so 11 years ago, Harrison was playing his very first soccer season. And Harrison, just as a quick backdrop, sweetest kid in the world, high EQ, just very sensitive, very sweet kid. And if any of you have seen youth soccer, it's usually not the high EQ kids scoring a lot of goals, right? It's usually the kids just, recently released from like a work release program or
Yeah,
parole,
exactly.
yeah.
right?
And their
It's the
parents are no better.
That's exactly right. So needless to say, Harrison had not scored a lot of goals this season. And so everybody on the team had. And so my wife and I and our daughter, we lugged out the lawn chairs again for another Saturday, for another ordinary day. But on this particular day, something really, truly extraordinary happened. And it was about midway through the game. And this kind of scene plays out in slow motion in my head. It's almost like, cue the James Horner dramatic music. He rears back his leg, he kicks the soccer ball, and it goes into the back of the net for Harrison's first soccer goal. In the crowd, these sweet parents, they went wild because they knew that Harrison had not yet scored a goal, and he did here. And his coach goes and picks him up, and there was this little split second right in between the ball going into the goal, and his coach picking him up, where he turned to the sidelines, and it was just quarter second, half second, but he turned to the sidelines to lock eyes with me, right? For him to see the pride on my face and the smile on my face and share this beautiful moment together. And it really truly was magical, except for the fact that I missed every bit of what I just described. That
Mm.
when my sweet little boy looked over, all he saw was the top of my head because I was looking down at my phone. And I would love to say I was doing something important, and I may have been. I actually don't know, but all I do know is when he looked over, he saw me looking at my phone, and I'll never get that moment back. And so it was one of those moments, and I'd love to say that it was the only time that kind of thing happened, but it wasn't. But I had a realization right then that there was something wrong, right? That I had a relationship with a device, with an inanimate object in my pocket, in my hand. I had this relationship with this device, and it was getting in the way of all the most important relationships in my life. And I knew something had to change.
That's so
Wow.
powerful.
Yeah, it's a big part of my story too. In our book, we talk about it, about intermittent tech fasting, the need for it. And I
Mm,
tell some stories about when I came home and I try to put my phone someplace in the car or away from me for an hour or two. And I broke my own rule. I got on the trampoline with my 5-year-old daughter at the time. She's 9 now, and she's starting to bounce, and I get a text in my pocket about work.
mm.
And I leave the trampoline mentally, and I'm swearing under my breath because it was what I felt a pretty big deal. Nothing can be done. It was 5:30. It was the office had already closed, and
Mm.
I looked down, and she's quiver lipped, and I said, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" I thought she got hurt, and she just said, "Daddy, why are you so mad at me?" And so
Oh,
it was like, yeah, so it's
oh,
one that kind of like what you said, it sticks in the side and it goes, okay, I'm really appreciative of technology because we're getting to have a great
yes.
conversation with you right now, but you have to have times of complete and total unavailability for the people you
Mm.
lost. That's
It,
been a
it
big lesson for me.
Well, it's that story, Jim. It's I've heard from this was from Dr. John Deloney, who joined our podcast, and he talked about the when the parents is there on their phone. You said something was really interesting there that I loved how you said it. You said you left the trampoline mentally, and he talked about when parents are on their phones, it's very much that relationship between parent and child is very much like an alcoholic parent and child, how that interplay works between the two. It's like the parent is physically there, but their mind is gone, right? And so the child is trying to connect and to relate to the parent, but they can't because their mind is not there. And it's this thing that's in our pockets. And the thing that, and I always want to get the right words for this, but it feels sad to say this, but it is true. And I think it's important we acknowledge it. It is hard to do this. It is hard to get this right. It is hard to
Yeah.
disconnect from this thing. And I think, and that's one reason why I don't know that we've taken it that seriously, because the answer is so simple, right? I mean, we built a box to put your phone in. How basic is that? I understand that, but it's because we need help doing this hard thing. And you all may not know this. Some of your listeners may not know this. I have learned this over the past few years. Did you know that you can burn calories for free? Did you know that? Did you know you can run around your block burning calories? You can build muscle by doing, and you don't have to pay a nickel to do that. Yet, all of us belong to gyms. Most of us belong to gyms, right? Because we recognize how valuable exercise is. We recognize how valuable it is. But we also know how difficult it is to actually do it. So we pay money to join a place that removes the friction of doing this difficult thing that's very valuable for us. And I believe we're getting to a point in society, thanks to people, like The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, this great book that's out that talks about this, that's raised our consciousness and says, this is causing real damage. And it's about time we take it seriously and go to whatever extreme we need to harness out the bad and take in the good that we have from technology. Because right now it's been kind of the pendulum has swung a little bit too far, and it's time for us to take it seriously, recognize it's hard, and then take to the extremes that we need to do to get it right.
Wow.
I so appreciate the way that you said, we have a relationship with this thing. And you're absolutely right, because like it's the same way of, on date night, I choose to be with Jim instead of home with my children. And so that's a relational choice, right? And I
Yes.
guess it's the same if I'm choosing to pick up my phone and check on Facebook
Yeah.
on everybody else in the rest of the world than my child. Now, if you asked me, would you choose all of those people to interact with over your child that's right in front? Of course, I'd be like, no way, you're crazy. I would never do that.
Right.
However, sometimes that's the choice because it's a dopamine hit, it's a little release, it's a little bit of connection. It's like something, but honestly, all of that is really like right in front of us, even if you've got a cat, you know what I mean? Go pick a cat.
Well, and
But
you're
it is a
so
relationship. I mean,
you nailed it, Jamie. It is a relationship. And that, if I can for a second, I'd love to kind of go in on that word for a minute. When we talk about our relationship with our phones, I bet when I said that, people listening today didn't think, what is he talking about, a relationship with their phone? Everybody knows what we mean. We say that very casually, relationship with our phone. And I think it's important we take a step back and realize that that's freaking weird. Like, I just talked about a relationship with an object in my pocket. Like that, we don't have relationships as adults. We don't really have relationships with objects for the most part, right? Like I see my lawnmower once a week for 9 months out of the year, right? I don't have a
yeah.
relationship. When a conversation gets boring, I don't go sneak in a quick mow, right? We don't have relationships with objects as parents, as adults for the most part. But kids have relationships with objects. And these objects, there's a term for them. It's called transitional objects. It's called comfort objects. And those are things like blankies and teddy bears and binkies. And those are things that they cling to in the absence of their parents to make them feel close to their parents when their parents are gone. In other words, they provide a false sense of security in the absence of their real security. We are clinging to devices and they are pushing us back towards childhood. We're holding on to our phones, and they're serving as blankies, and they're serving as binkies, and they're serving as teddy bears to us. But we're doing this, we're clinging to these things, these transitional objects, these comfort objects. We're clinging to them where a child does, they cling when their relationships are gone. We're doing it when our relationships are right in front of us. We're doing it at the dinner table. We're doing it, Jim, not to throw you under the bus here. We're doing it on the trampoline. Hey, Joey, we're doing it at soccer games. We're clinging to these things, and they're devolving us back towards childhood. And just as a principle, and I know people listening are high achievers, and you're high achievers, and I like to think I'm a fairly decent high achiever. As a high achiever, I don't like the idea of going back to childhood. I want to grow. I want to get stronger. I want to get better. And I don't want this me clinging to this thing to move us back into relationship. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how we formed this relationship. Before I do, I'll take a pause there just on this idea of the transitional objects. If you have any other questions, you want to hit on those.
I mean, I just honestly, transitional is not only the binky and the blanky, but also it's like, okay, I did stupid things in high school, but I never smoked cigarettes. I had family members that died early ages, lung cancer, the whole nine. I never smoked cigarettes.
Mm,
But I was like, wow, I'm seeing this almost like a cigarette. Because I had plenty of friends that were 3 packs a day. And
mm,
what was that? Well, it was what you were saying, that comfort,
yeah.
that
Yeah, but nobody's telling us, oh, you can die from your phone. And so nobody
Mm,
cares. Instead, what we're doing is we're setting a pace, and our children are like, well, mom and dad are on it, so I'm going to be on it. It's like kind of the opposite,
well,
right?
mom and dad smoke, so I'm gonna
Yeah, I
smoke.
mean, yeah. So it's
so
like somehow it normalizes the pattern behavior.
I feel like we've been reading each other's mail. What you're saying is it's so spot on. So here's an interesting stat for you that since they began tracking smoking in adults to now, smoking has decreased by 78%. Since they began tracking childhood smoking, adolescent smoking, from then until now is down, guess what? 78%. The exact same percent
Isn't that
decrease
interesting?
in smoking. It is interesting. And you said it exactly, Jamie. This is normal. Of course, kids are noticing machines. Our business RO means to notice. Our kids are noticing machines. So what do? They notice and they adapt. They notice, adapt, they notice, adapt. So their sweet little, brains, all the neural pathways are firing and reforming and everything, so they're just adapting to what is normal for them. And so yes, of course, if they see mom and dad smoking, well, that's normal. Aren't all households like this? So I'm going to smoke. That's what's normal for me. If we are phone snubbing them at the dinner table, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to phone snub us. So we talk about 4 ways to change your relationship with your phone, and we can go into those in a bit, but I think it's important to take a step back first and realize when it comes to parenting. And by the way, I am a huge believer here, and this may be maybe a little controversial, that we got to stop blaming our kids and we got to
Oh.
stop blaming our spouse. The kids aren't the problem. The guy looking in the mirror is the problem.
Absolutely.
And the problem when it comes to parenting, and here's where grace comes in. Here's where we all have to give ourselves grace. Smartphones are 16 years old. iPhone is 16 years old. No one above us discipled us. No one taught us how to use these things. So if you've gotten it wrong, you're in good company. I'm right here with you, right? So I'm so bad I had to quit a career and start a company. So that's how bad I was. I bet you don't have to do that for most people out there. So the model that we've had when it comes to our phones is what we call the 3 M's. We as parents, the first M, we model this bad relationship with our phone. We phone snub our kids as they're talking. I did it last night to my daughter, and this is my career, by the way. So this is, we all do this. We model this bad relationship with our phones. We give our kids a phone, and they mimic what we've modeled. There's the second M. They mimic what we modeled. And then the third M is absolute lunacy. What we do is we get mad at our kids for mimicking what we have modeled to them, which makes zero sense at all that we do this. And if instead, if we started with ourselves and we came back and said, what if I'm the problem? What if I, to use your term, what if I cut out the digital smoking? What if I stop using my phone in bad situations? What if I modeled a good relationship and my kids mimicked that? And then you can make memories and make magic and enjoy those 18 summers with them, right? So, but it all begins with starting with ourselves and modeling this good relationship, recognizing our complicity in the matter, our responsibility in the matter, and cigarette smoking. Last comment on this: cigarette smoking changed. We all knew it was bad for us once we got past the advertisements of doctors recommending cigarettes every day. When we realized it was bad for us, nothing changed. When we recognized it was bad for our kids' lungs, that's when it changed. And we are now at a point where the evidence is overwhelming. Everybody go read The Anxious Generation. I just mentioned that by Jonathan Haidt. You'll read it there. You'll not need to be convinced anymore. We know it's damaging them. So our excuses are gone, and now we can do something about it. And I believe that's a little doom and gloom. I believe it's the most hopeful opportunity for us as parents right now in 2024. What an amazing opportunity we have to get this right now.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. And catering back to this relationship idea, or this like comfort idea that the phone brings, what's sad is that us as adults, like you said, in that, I think I was 20 when I first got a phone. Maybe a little older than that, because I'm definitely not just 36, but some kind of math along there. But it was always a utility. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
a flat tire, or it was a utility. And that's not how the phones are right now for our children. These
Yeah.
are, they're the entire relationship. They're their relationships with their relationships. They're their, it's an entire existence. So for us, it might be a relationship with the phone because we, our generation, we still get together and do stuff. We still mastermind. We still seek mentors and proteges, and we still have this entire social structure because we know what that was like. I don't think the next generation does. And so it truly is that's their entire comfort, their entire validation, and there isn't so much an external. I mean, I don't know. I'm just making some stuff up here, but I feel like it's real.
Yeah. Well, Jamie, what I love what you're saying is you're describing putting words to feelings we have, and that feeling is something's wrong. Like I don't need a bunch of stats to tell me something feels wrong. I don't need a bunch of stats to tell me that this is wrong. We know this is wrong. And what I'll say on your point there, which I really love, kids will very quickly adapt. And I don't know that we're giving our kids enough credit in this situation. My son, again, I told you he's turning 16 tomorrow. He's going to have 11 boys over to spend the night. And there's going to be a point in the night where I'm going to say, hey, boys, let's put your phones all down here. Let's put it in the RO box. And they will maybe fight for half a second about that. They'll fight over that. And then they will adapt to it immediately, and they will have an absolute blast. He's 16 years old. I promise you, people listening, it sounds scary to ask your kids, your kids and your kids' friends to put their phones somewhere while they're hanging out. They're going to love it because they're still kids. They're still humans. They still have this insatiable desire to connect. They want it so badly. Now, they may act like they don't. They may not be used to it. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but they adapt so quickly, and they love how it feels when they can be kids and when they can connect with each other. And even with you, I mean, a lot of the RO customers are typically families with kids who don't have phones yet. And so they're kind of teaching them the way early. But even if the kids are teenagers and they're a little bit older, they still want to connect with you, mom and dad. Like they still love it. I promise you. And it may not feel like it, but they're waiting for you to initiate. So our kids, when they're young, and I think a lot of people can relate. If you have young kids, you probably heard a line like this, similar to what you said, Jim. And Jim, let's use your example on the trampoline. Your daughter said something which probably hurt at the time. And if other people have heard something similar to that, mommy, put down your phone, daddy, put down your phone, mommy, watch me, daddy, watch me. I actually think we should celebrate those moments, even if it kind of hurts to hear at first. And there's a reason why. There are two reasons why I think we should celebrate that. One, your kid likes you if they're saying that. If they're saying put down your phone or daddy, why are you mad? Your daughter was telling you, Jim, daddy, I love you. And so that's good. We want that. And the second one is, and this is so freaking powerful, I think, is that our kids believe they are valuable enough to be looked at. When they're young and they're calling you out, that's so good. Like, I want that. I want them to have the foundational sense of value that gives them the boldness to tell me to put my phone down or watch them. That's good. Now, we do have to start getting concerned when they stop asking for it, when they've grown so accustomed, when they start believing that the phone is the priority and they're the distraction. So when they stop asking for it, that's when we need to be concerned. But if we have those moments, people have that trampoline moment or that soccer moment, that's so good because they like you and they believe they're worth being looked at. And we should continue to celebrate on that, capitalize on that, and make it their norm to realize that they are the primary focus of our attention and their phones are the distraction.
It's really good.
We've had this conversation in our relationship. Too.
Ooh,
You know
I
what I
want to
mean?
hear about
It's not just our children. I mean, it's our spouses too. And so, it's so important.
I used to make the mistake of bringing my phone on date night, and then you'd get that useless Facebook post, text, phone call that could wait. And I learned that was not a good thing. So
especially when I was like, I think I'm gonna Facebook later when you're trying to have sex with me.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Hey.
I don't know how that relates. I'm like, you're gonna find out.
Yeah.
Because
Okay, I'm so glad you said that. You broke the ice there, Jamie, because if dudes are just listening right now, you're gonna get more sex if you do this one right. Okay, so let's just cut to the chase for dumb guys like me. Like, there it is, and we are in the middle. I believe firmly that we are in the middle as a society of an intimacy crisis, and I'm not talking sexual in that respect. I mean just an intimacy, the feeling of being fully seen, fully known, fully loved. the willingness to open up your heart and be vulnerable to the people that are around you. So we're in this intimacy crisis, and the reason that it's dying, what's been killing it, it's not death by 1,000 cuts, it's death by 1,000 glances. Is
Mm.
that we're across the table, and this week I could have an hour-long conversation with my 14-year-old daughter Gianna, an hour long, and it's hard for a 14-year-old girl to open up. And if at minute 58 I take a glance at my phone,
It's done.
done. Jim, you nailed it. It's done, done, done. And not just that moment, but the future moments where she thinks about being open or opening up, because she's going to remember her little neuroplastic brain, don't forget, has wired itself to say, when you open up to dad, you get shut down. That sucks. Like, I don't want that. But again, this opportunity is amazing because we have the chance to get it right. We can be little like noticers of our kids and noticers of our family. And when my daughter begins to open up to me, you can say the 6 most powerful words in the English language in a relationship in 2024. And this is going to sound so reductive, and I get it, but I promise you it's true. If she opens up, she says, "Oh, Dad, can I talk to you? Or can I tell you about what happened at school today?" If I say these 6 words, "Hey, Gianna, let me put down my phone." If I just say those 6 words, don't take that much more credit, but do call it out and then physically remove it. Physically go put my phone somewhere else, put it in the RO box, put it in a drawer, whatever it is. What that's communicating to Gianna is this: Gianna, there are 8 billion people on this earth who can theoretically reach me on my phone. Right now, you're more important than every single one of them. So, what does that do to a 14-year-old girl the next time she's confronted with body comparison or bullying? She's going to know in her heart, yeah, this is hard. God, I know my daddy loves me. I know my mom loves me. And it's from those small acts of physically removing that thing and letting her know that she is the one right now. What does that do for my 16-year-old son, a young man who wants to be a good man? What does that do for my wife and the intimacy in our marriage? And yes, Jamie, you brought it up, dirty mind, to have a bunch more sex, right? Like those are good things for us. That intimacy that creates in the most important relationships just by changing that relationship with our phones.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and now what is the mental impact, because I know you talk about the mental health of our young ones, like how are these devices affecting them? Because it's not, I mean, this is like a multi-layered issue, and so it goes down to the modeling, the mimicking, because maybe us, the modelers, have the tools to say, hey, I didn't always live this way. I can live normal again.
Yes.
The younger ones don't have that. So what is that doing to them? I mean, I feel like we're in a totally different, in 16 years, what a change.
It is night and day different. And there are, again, the first thing I'll start with is one that we just know it. We just know, we know they're struggling. We can see it. We can see them walking with their heads down. And I know it sounds, like I'm the old man kind of, shouting from, get off my lawn at the kids here. I understand that, but we know there's something wrong. We know with them looking down, it feels wrong. But when you look at the statistics, when you look at the level, the one I'll pinpoint is teenage unhappiness. It is at such a peak right now, and it permeates into stuff that's just heartbreaking to hear of, suicidal ideation and cutting and all the things that are just heartbreaking and devastating. And not to be, this is going to be an overly simplistic answer, but that began about 15 years ago, teenage unhappiness, 16 years ago now, that began to peak. And I believe that a major contributing factor to that is this generation of kids is growing up with parents who have looked at screens instead of their eyes. And is that the answer for everything? No, that's not the answer. There's a bunch more stuff, of course, we can do, but that thing is the one thing that aligns with the timing of teenage unhappiness beginning to go to an all-time high. Now, other things, if you look again, you listen to, I don't know if some of your listeners may know who 1,000 Hours Outside is, 1,000 Hours Outside, Josh and Jenny Urich. It's a movement of just getting families outside for 1,000 hours each year, or getting close to that, or working towards it. That idea of free play and getting outside and all the stuff that nature provides to you. That's another thing. Yeah, we need to get our kids outside more for sure. And we need to get them off screens. And I think a tendency, as we were talking about screens, is to demonize the entire thing. Jim, you said earlier, there's some great things that happen on our phone. This technology is allowing us to connect with each other right now. And so how can we not necessarily swing the pendulum all the way back to just abolishing phones. I don't think that's a helpful solution. It's not practical for the world we live in. It doesn't set our kids up to adapt and to live in a world that is technologically driven. So if we can just figure out how can we begin to harness these things, how can we prioritize? This is why we start with the relationship. How can we prioritize relationships, human relationships, by changing that relationship with our phone? Because when we do, I think we will begin to see a massive change happening across the world. And I really do believe it's happening now. And it's not, the Surgeon General talks about this as a public health crisis. Congress passed the TikTok ban. There are all these other things that, Jonathan Haidt recommends we get these out of school, phones out of schools. I agree with all those things, and they're so wonderful, but I can't wait on the school board. I can't wait on Congress. I can't wait on the Surgeon General. Here's a promise. If everybody looked to themselves first and made the change for themselves first, this crisis, when it comes to technology, when it comes to phones, would be solved today. And it has to begin, just like anything else, it has to begin with ourselves.
We in the pandemic, when everyone got put at home, and we have, a decent community of families following us, and everyone's, what did we do? Well, we get on our phones, or we're now turning on the TV even more, and then it's, oh my gosh, mainstream media just puking all over everything, and sky is falling, all the worst of the worst. And so the same thing where it's like, well, to go cold turkey is a hard thing for people. And they're like, that's just not realistic. Like I had to be on my Zooms and this and that. So what we started to do was something, this was like the starting point, called a dinner time challenge. And so the dinner time challenge was 1 hour. Pick 1 hour a day that no one is going to have a screen in front of them.
We did 2 hours, but we made it up, so that's fair.
We made it up. So we were at 2, but we were saying everyone start with 1. 1. We've been told this stat that the average family 60 years ago would sit at the dinner table for 90 minutes.
Wow.
And now the average time is just under 12 minutes. And I can't help but think we're rushing off to something. And what is it normally? Well, it's that quickest, easiest dopamine thing to get to for us or a teen or whoever. And so we said, look, go for an hour, see what could happen in an hour. We had really good results where people had better conversations. They were getting outside more. They started to live their values more, plan more adventures. And that happened for us, and to tell people it's a building block, that 1 hour dinner time challenge. Then you can work up to like, I don't care what's going on. You're not getting me on date night with my wife. We were at 2 concerts this weekend. I didn't bring my phone into the concert. I was like, no, she's like, if you have your watch, I'll take your phone if we get separated at the bathroom. And so that's a few hours. And then, we've worked it up. It was not last Christmas, the Christmas before. I actually put my phone in a drawer for 4 days at Christmas.
Let's go. And
I said to my, call Jamie's phone. She has less of an issue with this than me. She's never had a drinking problem with her cell phone. So, and it was like, it kind of, the thing I can compare it to, Joey, is if you ever saw, you remember the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire?
Sure.
Okay. And the bully, I think is Butch or whatever, the big musclehead bully comes up because he dumped the cafeteria food on him. Right. He comes up and remember, he's just getting his spidey senses and he sees this punch coming like, just slow. And he just is able to dodge it, look at it. And I said, that's almost like the regrounding of perception of attention that you gain when you start to shut off for that long.
Wow.
So it was like you were tripping on mushrooms?
It wasn't anything to do with drugs. It's like your senses are so heightened because they're not dulled from the interruption. And that's what I've said, where you can go from an hour to then a few hours, then to a whole weekend, then to and that makes a big difference.
So here's what I'd love about that. And it would be easy to take that snippet of what you just described and someone say like, man, Jim's amazing. I could, he's superhuman, then he can do this. How does he put it? But you're not doing that because you're good with your phone. You're doing that because you're bad with your phone. Exactly. In the same way that I am. I have to have these constraints around me, these structures around me to accomplish the things that are important to me. So over my right shoulder here is Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a fantastic book that you all have probably read. But he talks about how if you're relying on your willpower at all time, but your environment is not set up for it, you will fail. Environment trumps willpower every time. Jim, it would have been, no matter how superhuman you are, it would have been impossible, physically impossible for you to check your phone at those concerts this weekend because you didn't have it with you, right? You just can't do it. We can't use our phones with us when we don't have them. And so the core relationship with our phone begins with the fact that they are proximate to us all the time. Stats tell us that 91% of us have our phones with us 24 hours a day. We have not yet in 16 years, right? We have not yet determined this environment. We've not set an environment. We have a garage for our car and we have a valet tray for our keys. We know where everything goes. When it comes to our phone, it's our purse or our pocket, right? And so when they are proximate to us, we interact with them all the time. In fact, 89% of our smartphone usage is self-initiated. It's not the inbound notifications. It's me saying
89%.
89%. And so when people say
Yeah.
silence your notifications,
Okay, so that means not that you got a text or like we don't really even have our notification on. So it's that you are reaching for the phone, not that the phone's reaching for you. Now, let me tell you something. If we were in a relationship and I reached for you 89%, it would 89, 81.
oh, 89.
89. Do you understand the imbalance? Like you're not looking for the attention. You're not like, hey, touch me,
Mm.
but I'm touching you. And you'd be like, number one, you'd be probably a really happy man. However, you wouldn't be
I don't
reciprocating.
know if I would be.
No, but I mean, because you'd be like,
That's pretty out of balance.
no, I'm
Give me
just
a
saying you'd
minute.
be like,
Yeah.
wow, 89% of the time she's all over me. But do you see, but like that's how our phone feels. And you know what I mean? And our phone is
That's-
like, ooh, you touch me so much. You also want to buy this and you also want to see what this
Right.
friend is doing. And so our phone, I'm just
No,
like
I get it.
I wasn't
Now I
putting you
get it.
down.
I
I'm just
didn't
saying like you'd be like, oh yes, touch me more. And that's kind of what our phone does.
No, I get it.
That's
That is, I've never heard it put that way. That is something.
Isn't
Wow.
that, and this is
One
from
way.
this
I
is
mean,
from Dr. Maxi Heitmeyer at the London School of Economics. This is all he focuses on and talks about this. And so again, the natural, oh, silence your notifications, that just doesn't do it. It is us. It's only because it's with me all the time. And if you remove that, and again, the third piece of the relationship, we call this the PID loop, PID, proximity, interaction, dependence. The third one, dependence. So we are dependent on our phones for a lot of things, but we begin to think that we're more dependent on them than we actually are. It's the reason why people have their phones on their nightstands every night, because they could say, well, I need an alarm clock, but that's not a real dependence. You can get a separate alarm clock, but you can delude yourself into thinking that you're more dependent on it than you are. And so when you're more dependent on it, what do? Well, you're around it more. So you're proximate to it more, and then you interact with it more, and then you're more dependent on it. And it just cycles on and on and on. But if we can solve that very first piece, that constant proximity to us, if we solve that, our interaction goes down drastically, our dependence goes down drastically, and then we feel less of a need for it. And so we're less proximate to it. Jim, I bet you didn't the first day, I bet you didn't just go to a concert without your phone. I bet you began to wean yourself off of your phone, just like building a muscle. We are running a marathon here, and we have to start slowly and build up slowly and recognize this is a lifelong journey that we're on, and we can get a little bit better every day, and we don't have to solve it all right now.
Yeah. And experiments are good. So
Yes.
our book again, which is all about a simple strategy I had to have a relationship with each of my kids. The principle number 2 is intermittent tech fasting. And so every quarter, the premise of our thing is my kids are my most important clients, investors, whatever you want to call them in the entrepreneurial mindset. So I'm going to spend at least a half day a quarter with them one-on-one without a phone, reconnecting with them on their terms. What do they want to do? We're going to spend the day. And there's a challenge there where we say to people, and it was a challenge for me, could I turn my phone off for 4 or 5 hours? And
on a work day,
on a work day, lots of times on a work day, just so we'd both play hooky from school and work, a few times a year. And could we, could we get out without the world exploding? Were we going to turn back our phone on and everything had crumbled? The answer is no.
Right.
No, and not even for the teens. But when you do it as an experiment, like have fun with it. See if your whole business crumbles in 4 hours because you turned off your phone one afternoon to hang out with your 8-year-old. And usually we haven't had one yet say you were wrong. My business totally imploded, not once. And we think of about over 300,000 people using this strategy now. So we've got a pretty good track record for not imploding businesses for trying this.
I love it. It's so
Joey,
good. Yeah.
Joey, we've referenced RO a bit, and I see it there over your shoulder.
Tell us about it.
We are like sold, as soon as we hang up, we're on it because I was telling.
Well, I only know one friend who had a competitive product to you, and it's not even competitive, but we all liked it. It was at this dad's group, And Sean said, hey, I actually use the gun safe approach.
Love
And
it.
so he had a gun safe. He would
It's
would
not quite
lock
as
it up.
practical
So it's not as practical, but
or
it
as
was
pretty. Your
he's like
is
oh
pretty.
shit. It wasn't as pretty, but he's like, oh shit, if I put it in the gun safe, then I gotta undo the thing again. And so that's just enough space. But this is much more you're kind of going from a rotary phone to
Right.
something modern that's
But it's
this is more set
pretty.
for the day for better results.
I wonder
Now,
if I wonder if the guns felt threatened being around something so dangerous as a phone.
right.
Jamie, I didn't mean to cut you off. Excuse me.
That's funny. That's a good one. So tell us, the reason we're talking about it and you know so much is because you do have this great product, the RO, and now, and it's got an app. I was telling him all about it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, let's get one.
I'm like,
So
so
we don't have a gun safe. So
yeah, we don't have guns. So if we did, they'd be in a safe. But the idea of, our phones tell us how often we touch them, like,
Yeah.
oh, your screen time is blah, blah, blah. But I love the fact that the box, it's not, do you call it an RO? Like, is the
Yeah.
unit called RO? It tells you how long you worked on your phone, which I think is amazing.
And I think one reason why we're struggling on this in general as a society, again, we get this Sunday screen time report from Apple that tells us how much time we've been on our phones. And inevitably, it's either one of two things. One, you feel bad about yourself, or two, it's just not actionable. It's a data point, and that's maybe good. But it's almost like we look at that as if that all screen time is created equal, that all screen time is bad. So I could look and say, wait, why was my usage up 25% this week? And then I go look and I can feel crappy by myself, but I went and looked at the data like, oh, that's right. I used Waze for 3 hours on that day. And so does that mean that should I judge my screen time based on that? So I think we're looking at the wrong metrics when it comes to it. And this was the realization for us was, what if we began to reward physical distance from our phones? What if we began to quantify physical distance from our phones? And again, because when you spend any amount of time, we already said this, you join the 9% club. If 91% of people have their phones with them all the time, if you spend any amount of time, you're in the 9% club. And that's something that you should feel good about. That's something that you should celebrate. And so RO is built with the recognition that one, we have to get our phones physically distant from us. They need a home. And so we built the RO box. Like you said, it's wife designed, it's wife approved. It's a beautiful white fabric box with a bamboo lid that charges your phones. You put your phone in and it charges your phone and it holds your phone. But that's not enough, just the place for it. So we need to gamify the experience of being away from our phones. We need to create, just like anything else, just remove that friction and do something. And gamification we know works. In fact, that's how social media companies keep us on our phone. So what if we gamified the experience of being off your phone? So when you drop your phone in RO, it automatically connects to an app, and that app begins to quantify the amount of time you're away from your phone. And it's not just that, it works almost like a fitness app. When you finish a session away from your phone, you do a quick tag of what you were doing. You could tag family time, or you could tag morning devotion, or whatever it is that you're doing. You could tag date night. And then you're kind of rolling up the time that you're spending your life away from your phone. So if I went and looked at my all time or my year to date, it would say I've spent something like 42 hours of phone-free family time with my family, or I've spent 10 hours in morning devotions, not to brag. But we can quantify all these things that we're doing away from our phones. And that feels good. And this is all built around the habit loop. James Clear defines it, and Charles Duhigg defined it as a cue, the RO box, or the notifications in the app. Again, I'm not anti-notification. Reminds you to spend some time away from your phone, leads you into a routine of physically putting your phone down, which crescendos in a reward. So this feeling that you get when you've spent 47 minutes away from your phone and you tag your session, or this badge that you get, or connecting your time ring on if you have a daily goal, all that feels good. And then when that feels good, you just want to go do it again. So we're breaking this cycle and replacing it with something better. And the reward, sure, we have all these gamified ways to do it within the app. The real reward is the life that's on the other side of your phone. That's the real reward. The real reward is not a digital badge you get. The real reward is looking in your son's eyes and your daughter's eyes and having a meaningful conversation with them, going on a date night with your spouse, and really experiencing life to its fullest. And this is for the person, by the way, this is built for families. So as people are looking at this, an RO membership is for the entire family. It's one cost for the entire family. So it's not individual, because we need to do this as a family, I believe. And when you do it together, this collective, by the way, there are leaderboards and scoreboards and all that stuff you can do within your family. And this is for the person who, as they're listening to this, says, yeah, I've kind of struggled with this. I've tried a couple things. Yeah, we tried a basket for a while, or I've tried to silence my notifications and I really haven't gotten this one down. And we really will make a promise, and this is not a product pitch, I promise you in any way. But for the person who has struggled with this will absolutely change your life. And I know it because it's changed mine and it's changed thousands of other people's lives by making this change to the relationship with your phone.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm super excited about it because we've always had a no phones rule. And when the kids' friends would come over, they'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. You do that thing where you put your phone on the counter.
It's well known.
Yeah, it was like, it is a thing. And, you know,
Yeah.
if you have a space for it, you know, that's like a key thing. Like, oh,
Mhm.
everything has its home. This is where the home is. And I mean, I think that that's like a teen added bonus that it charges, you know, or that
Yes.
we, you know,
Yeah.
Sunday afternoons, you know, have a little family meeting and okay, who won? Who did the most
Right.
playtime? Or when the boys'
Absolutely.
girlfriends come over, they put their phone in there and they're like, ooh, I'm better than you. I'm beating your parents' game and you're the one playing it. You know, like all the layers of how it can go. But
Absolutely.
especially we have 5 children ranging 2 to 20. And the younger ones watching the older ones, you know, talk about a
Mm.
multi-layer
It's big.
Right.
modeling and mimicking here. But
Yes.
just for them to see, you know, the implementation and how it trickles
Mm.
down. So this is awesome. I'm super excited. I'm really grateful for our conversation today. How can people
Wow.
learn more?
Yeah, where can they learn about you?
I would love for everybody, whether you join RO or not, that doesn't bother us. We'd love if you just go to goro.com. Just go to the website. You can learn more about us. If you're curious, wonder what it looks like, just go to goro.com. And if you are on Instagram, people can follow us at GoRO now.
And that's ARO.
That's right, GOARO.com.
Perfect. Joey, thank you so
Yeah,
much for
great
your time
interview.
today. This was great.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Take care.